Giselle. Hi, I believe we're live on
Didn't
Facebook.
hit record yet, but I will do record now.
It's so good to be here.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, I believe we're good to be here.
Whoops, let me now go and close it on Facebook so we don't hear ourselves twice.
Everyone.
There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. Super excited to be here today. Let me know in the chat how many of you are moms that are joining, whether you're watching this now or later, or if you're a caregiver and you work with kids, maybe you're a teacher, a daycare worker, maybe you're a grandma, maybe you're an auntie, maybe you have a neighbor that has kids. Just let us know. And I'm super excited to have Vanessa here. So let's dive right in. I'm going to introduce Vanessa to you. And I know some of you were on Flirty Fun Friday this morning, and Vanessa was there too. And we were talking about big emotions. And I actually wish I would have known Vanessa decades ago. I am now a grandma. I have two sons, Lucas and Aiden. Many of you know are 20. Lucas is 23 and Aiden is 20. Although we're still navigating emotions, I think as long as we're alive, we do, right? So,
yeah.
I really could have used your support then, back when my son was probably like 3 and 5, and then a teenager. So let me introduce Vanessa. And again, those of you that are here, just let us know in the chat that you're here, where you're from, whether you're a mom or how you're connected with kids. And there will be an opportunity at the end to ask Vanessa some questions. She also has an amazing event that's happening that I'm super excited about for all of you that are moms out there. So she'll be sharing that with you as well. And it was complimentary, right? It's a free event as far as I
It's
know.
free. Yeah, it's all about, and a little bit what I'll be sharing today is how much navigating big emotions really does start with us. And I know you do so much great work with the folks right here, in the sisterhood, in the Sacred Pleasure Path sisterhood, around like how we relate to ourselves. And the series kind of builds on that by giving 6 ways for folks to bring more calm into those patience testing moments, the ones where we might lose our cool or, maybe get more upset than we'd like. And now you're there, you're experiencing the emotion. What can you do about it? That's what the training's about that we're right in the middle of. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So yeah, you will hear more about that at the end. And yeah, I love that what, Vanessa's doing and what I'm offering, that it all just complements each other, right? The more we take care of ourselves with our own emotions that we're navigating, and the more we learn tools to work with our children, it's just such a beautiful, in that infinity win-win. So Vanessa also has a master in education like I do, and she's a teacher and empowerment um, parent empowerment coach. Known really for, and I would say this personally from my experience connecting with you, Vanessa, that she is refreshingly honest, hands-on, and has a really personal approach, really down to earth. She really empowers you as a parent to find the calm, find the confidence and tools that you need to address some of those challenging moments where there might be those meltdowns or power struggles and sibling fights and motivation issues, and trying to get your kids, whether they're a toddler or a teen, to do things. And she really helps you and your family to shift some of those painful dynamics so that you can have love flow again more freely, really, between yourself and the family members, and build really resilient, lifelong relationships based on respect, appreciation, and love. So I'm super excited to have you here with us, Vanessa. So I'm going to pass the torch to you and let you share, and maybe give some women some tips as well. And then please do post your questions in the chat. They tend to be delayed, so post them sooner than later. And I promise to check the chat later to answer some of your questions with Vanessa.
Yeah, and I'm here too in the Facebook chat, so I can play in the chat as well in the comments. So hi everybody, whether you're a mom, an auntie, or just have littles in your life in some way, we just welcome you into the into the beautiful space of kind of stepping into that caretaking role. And if you're here, it's because you have a big heart, and I see you with your big loving heart, because you really care about the littles in your life. And oftentimes, we are in those challenging moments where we end up doing things we really wish we hadn't, things like giving in and maybe even feeling guilty or defeated afterward, or maybe instead of giving in, we dig in and we end up like dropping some sort of consequence that we can't even follow through on. I've been there. As Vireo was mentioning, I have a master's in education. I also spent 15 years in the classroom as the lead teacher, really guiding preschoolers and elementary kids to more independence, more resiliency. And also as a step parent and having a 7-year-old in my household now, I'm in it. I'm in it with all of you. I got you. And I just wanted to come in and share with you some inspiration that, if you are particularly feeling some pain or struggle around some challenging behaviors or big emotions running through your household, just know that, we're going to take good care of you today. Give you a few great tips that you can, really start to bring into the family system. And then, as Vera mentioned, there's a way you can, continue filling your toolbox with me this week. So just so good to be here,
Beautiful.
Vera. Thank you.
Oh, excited to have you. And I know you've touched on it a little bit already, but can you maybe, because you've had that experience and now also being a stepmom, which brings a whole nother dynamic, right, into the picture. Um, for those of you who are stepmoms as well, maybe you can mention that in the chat, because I think there's other challenges that are, uh, I'm thinking of the French word augmenté, increased, augmenté, augmented, that happen, right, when we've got blended families. And actually there's, I know there's lots of women here too who are from blended families, right, which tends to be more common nowadays. So I'd love if you spoke a little bit more about, what are some of the challenges that are common that you've noticed among families and parents that are dealing with children with some, as they navigate some of those big emotions.
Sure. Well, one of the challenges that comes up right away, I think, for folks is like, am I supposed to be like getting involved and really coaching them and soothing them, or is this a time where I give them some space? Like, what to do and what to say, like when you're in those really challenging moments. And so that's one thing, knowing what to do and what to say, being able to like read the situation and really respond in like the most like supportive way possible, but also not sort of indulging the emotion too much. It's sort of this balance that we need to strike. We've all been there. Like sometimes we get down their level, we really connect with them, but we realize, 20 minutes in that we're just feeding fire into their anger or their sadness. And really like now we're really in a deep hole. Or other times you try to like kind of, get them out of that emotion too quickly and it just keeps coming back because it's not addressed enough. So just that distinction can be really tricky, like when to kind of be a little bit more like, let's bounce back and keep going, or when to like really sit with it and help them move through it. So that's one thing that comes up a lot. Also, there's just in the family system or in the daily life with kids, there can be a lot of stressors that lead to these big emotions in the first place, right? And so like, when we talk about like the Dalai Lama and the Ekman team, Paul Ekman's research team came together and really tried to figure out like the anatomy of the emotional experience. And one of the things that we've now normalized this word trigger, right? That, there's this combination of your perception, your preconditions, and the actual stimulus that create a trigger. And then a cascade of things happen physiologically and psychologically, spiritually, after the trigger happens. Well, turns out that daily life can be really triggering, right? Because, for example, getting out the door in the morning can be such a trigger. All the stress of like having somebody telling you, go get your shoes, go get your this, go get your that. Like they're feeling bossed, you're feeling like you're nagging. It's a stressful experience. That can be triggering to the emotions, right? You can get angry, you can get frustrated, you can get sad, you can even get nervous or anxious. So getting ahead of some of those triggers can be so powerful. Things like running your routines really smoothly, getting really clear about what limits are, making sure your kid kind of knows what the expectations are ahead of time. Vireo and I both know from setting up classrooms, like if the expectations are clear and the routine's clear, you're likely going to have a pretty smooth day, or at least be able to be resilient when new things come up. But if there's not a good routine in place and the expectations aren't clear, you're already off to a rough start, right? So sometimes what we do in the work together, and what I encourage every caregiver to do, whether they're working with a mentor or not, is to really take a good look at those, you know, the limits and expectations, making sure that you've had the conversations with the other caregivers of like, what kind of table behavior are we going to ignore, and what kind of table behavior are we going to address and really teach them at this age, at 5, at 10, at 14, right? How often do they need to clean up after themselves? How much are we going to assist them, and what's their responsibility, right? So those kinds of things, getting clear on that. And then also laying out a really strong morning and evening routine can make such a difference. So oftentimes we're looking at it, you know, kind of holistically, like what's happening before the big emotion arrives, what's happening while the emotion is here, and then what's happening in the aftermath or in the kind of cool down period to sort of repair and come to maybe a greater understanding. So that's a long answer to things that are challenging, but I just kind of like wanted to paint the whole picture of like what's happening here, because oftentimes we're just sort of stuck in the hard emotional moment, and we're not able to kind of step back and see the whole system and see it more holistically. So I'm just offering a little perspective today.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I can definitely relate, to that. And I think, let us know in the chat as a parent if you're able to relate to that, or as a caregiver, someone working with kids as well. Whether they're toddlers or teens, I think it's all very similar. And it can also be with other adults too, right? We have that as we're all navigating a lot of emotions right now on the planet. I think people are even more triggered, not only kids, but also adults. So yeah, finding that balance between sort of the tough love and soothing, and having those routines and structures, right? Which is when we talk about pleasure, it's like having the masculine, right? That's going to support and hold the containers, and so that there can be some flow in between. And without a structure, there's no flow, right? We need both. So I think I love that you bring that perspective of having, the balance of limits and expectation, and having that clear, and those conversations, so that we can have more smooth flow. And kids, yeah, it's true, absolutely, as a teacher and as a mother, and now for me, I'm a grandma. The more we can have clearer expectations set up front, and it sounds like that's really what you help people to do, is kind of, like you said, take that big picture, the wholeness picture, so that they can even themselves rise up, kind of feel our emotions, acknowledge them, but then also step into the bigger view of like, where are we headed? Why are we doing this? What's the point of all of this? So I love that. I think that's so important. So much wealth of information already, Vanessa. I love it. Another question that I have for you is, what are some of the kinds of outcomes that you see? You've talked a little bit, maybe you can talk a little bit more of what are some of the outcomes you see when kids, when they're parents, when the parents are able to coach their kids emotionally. What do you notice kind of in the long run happens as families when they're able to coach them?
Yeah, so this whole idea of emotion coaching is sort of what we were like touching on today. And it's when we're able to like be the guide at their side when they're going through these big emotions. And sometimes when we're the reason they're angry, we can't do it in the moment. It's sort of more reflective. But what we have the opportunity to do is, really to help them tune into what it is they're experiencing using their body's clues, right? Like if you're hot cheeks and clenched fists, that might be anger, right? Whereas if they're feeling really low energy, that might be sort of sadness, and kind of droopy, right? Maybe feeling a little defeated. So helping them to tune in their physical signs, helping them to name the emotion, and then helping them to like find something about it that it makes sense that it's here, like that this experience is here, which is a little different than like completely validating and feeding it, like adding more fuel to a fire, right? Or help like having a kid get more and more sad or more and more scared. We can just validate something that makes sense about it. And what ends up happening is that opens up the possibility that then they can do something that will soothe themselves and help them through it, like a breathing tool or like a tense and release tool, or maybe like even using a little bit of humor, putting your attention on something that's like fun or light to give yourself a little break while you cool down. And when kids have emotion coaching in their lives from a trusted adult, whether it's their parent or another caregiver, there's all these really great outcomes that can come from that. And Vera, I'm wondering if it's possible to share, if you can turn on the share screen feature. And if not, I can just read it off. So maybe if you want to noodle on that, let me know
No,
if you're, yeah,
I
that'd be
totally
great.
forgot to do that earlier. So
That's
yes,
so
I
cool.
can absolutely do
Oh,
that. So you
great.
can
Okay.
share
And I can just
share
start
the
sharing it and then I'll put the visual up while you're taking care of that. Thank you. So the research shows that kids who have adults in their lives who will be willing to kind of be in the fire with them a little bit and coach them emotionally, they get to have a lot of benefits. So one of the things that really stood out to me, there's a lot of them, but when they have this adult in their life coaching them, they tend to have better friendships. You know, we think of like what makes a happy kid at school, or a happy kid in like a soccer team, or a happy kid in like you know, even in the like hang out with their cousins. It's when they have really great friendships, right? So oftentimes friendships and other social dynamics will just be challenging emotionally, and so kids who can handle their frustration or anger in ways that are more, you know, more constructive tend to be more trusted by their peers. Kids who maybe like will lean towards being a little bit more resilient of trying new things will, you know, maybe be able to, you know, try a new game with their friends and play along and get to have a fun time that they wouldn't have otherwise. So there's a lot of ways to be resilient. And emotion coaching really helps kids to kind of handle the emotions as they come, because they always come. That's why they tend to have better responses to stress. And that goes along with academic achievement, because as we know, you know, like a lot of academic environments can be stressful at times, either a big workload. You know, this whole navigating virtual learning piece this last year has been quite a transition for a lot of families and students. And then also, you know, kind of imagining themselves out in the world as they're doing things like taking those big tests and applying for colleges, and it's all stress, right? Like it has a possible stress response. And so being able to navigate that is really such a strength, you know, for the kids to have. I know that for myself, like I just had a lot of pressure and demand, but didn't have a whole lot of emotion coaching. And it was really like, you know, at certain points I would really burn out after pulling several all-nighters, and I didn't really know how to ask for help because that wasn't really, you know, presented to me as an option. And it did lead me to, you know, having to really like take a big step back from education. I ended up leaving chemical engineering at Cal Berkeley because I, you know, I'd worked so hard my whole career to get to this like pinnacle of the best school and the most competitive degree and the best career. I didn't have the emotional resilience to make it. And if I had had some of these this coaching and tools earlier in my life, you know, my mom and I have even reflected about this. She's like, I wish I had met you when I was trying to raise you as a stressed out, hardworking single parent. And that was such a breakthrough for her too, because she does not like to admit mistakes, right? So it's just like to even consider that she could have done it better was like a big deal. But it's true. Like when I see this, I'm like, yeah, you know, like when those mean girls were being mean to me, I would have had a better way of standing up for myself, better friendships, right? The stress around the academic achievement, I would have had more tools and skills around that if I'd had a little more help naming and moving through my emotions. And I wouldn't have like stayed in bed for 3 days crying when I quit Cal, you know, and that was like that kind of low point, that depression. And then the anxiety of sharing that with my mom and worrying about how she was going to react, which she'll admit wasn't the best. So yeah, right. We get to see how it could go either way. And then just like less likely to take those unhealthy risks in adolescence. You know, I had this one mom who ended up working with me in a coaching intensive, you know, high powered mom. She's like a lawyer. So achievement oriented, like she just had such a great life outside the home. But then she's starting out every morning, like in fights with her daughters about getting their butts out the door, her 8 and 10-year-old daughters. You know, they had a good relationship overall, but these mornings were really wearing her out. So what did she do? She came to a motivation workshop with me. She came to a meltdowns workshop just to try to understand what was going on. And she realized that there was this moment when I said, well, sure, it's just fights now, morning fights, and you're just kind of irritated. But what about when they can pick up the keys and walk out the door? What about then? You know, and she said that's what got, she's like, wow, I need to get off this path with my daughters and get into a better way forward, and kind of coming back to how do we build relationships through these tough, stressful mornings. So she shifted things, right? And so that's what you get to do. She got to read her kids better around like, oh, they're not really responding to this. I should switch it up. What do I need right now to stay calm? So, so that I can be more mindful of my tone. So I'm not coming in, giving them something to push back on. So this is what's possible here. And she now feels much more confident that even if they do consider taking some unhealthy risks, they'll be more likely to share with her if something starts to go wrong and they need some support, right? They won't be assuming she won't be understanding or she won't be a listening ear. They're now going to hopefully assume that she can handle it. She's not going to yell at them about it. And then instead, they're going to be able to have a conversation about it. And maybe she can even guide them about how they're having a mixed feeling like, ooh, this is exciting, but I also know it's risky. I'm also feeling a little peer pressured, but I'm also curious, those nuances in adolescence. So, and then she had the bandwidth, this sweet Melissa, she had the bandwidth to finally go for it. And then she campaigned to be on city council, one of the first African-American women to be on the city council in her city, and she won this last election season. So I'm like, woohoo, right? Like what's possible? Her resilience, her kids' resilience, like the whole system got to be able to be, be more bright and bigger and bolder in the world. So super exciting stuff that's possible on the other end.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much wealth of information already. So who wouldn't like to learn to read their kids better? Which my sense is, myself included, I think, I was listening to Gabor Mate, and he would definitely echo what you're saying here, that when children are emotion coached, then they have better emotional resilience later in life, better friendships, all of those things you talked about, more resilient, less risk of depression and anxiety. I could have used you if you could have helped my mom, right? And I think the thing that I see from what you're saying too, Vanessa, for us becoming adults, right? Those children then becoming adults is Dr. Gabor Mate was talking about how trauma, a big part of trauma is because we tend to depress those emotions down, and then we become disconnected from our emotions, and then because of that we're not as resilient and reading other people's emotions. So it just becomes then when we become parents and we haven't had that emotional coaching, then we struggle with our own emotions, like you said, and end up yelling at our kids or not knowing how to help them navigate. So there's so much wealth. And I love that your mom said she wished she would have had you when she was raising you who you are now. And I definitely, would have appreciated that as well. So I'm super excited, even just what you shared here today with people, to bring it to an awareness. And I think, another piece I just kind of want to add to it is that not to be hard on ourselves, right? Just to realize that if we didn't have that emotional coaching from our parents, which let's face it, most of us probably didn't, that it's not their fault and it's not your fault. And I'm curious, this is just kind of a question in the moment here. What do you find with parents that are maybe they're teens and they didn't have the emotional coaching? How do you find that this works with kids who didn't have that emotional coaching, and the parents didn't have the emotional coaching, and now they're trying to bring it in with teens instead of when the kids were younger? Like in an ideal world, we all wish we had it when we were younger, but what if, because I know some of the moms who are listening also have teens, right? There's quite a few that are teens.
Yeah, and I inherited my stepkids and became their bonus mom when they were 10 and 12, and so we head straight into adolescence. They're now 22 and 24. So I've been there with them. I've been through the whole thing. And I guess what I would share, even though like I tend to focus, well, most of the folks I work with have 2 to 12-year-olds, but I do have some really great folks in my world who, you know, have kids over 12. And it's really about understanding that without trust and them having the sense that you truly want to understand their point of view, it's really hard to get anywhere with a teen. And so just like toddlers, okay, by the way, toddlers and teens are going through the same amount and intensity of brain development and reorganization. So teens are like toddlers in the sense that they are like completely like there's so much work going on there and there's so much shifting and there's so many mood swings around that, not just because of hormones, you know, hormones is part of it, but because they're actually literally developing a totally different kind of brain. So there's a lot of connection here where I find that the only way you can really reach a toddler and get them to listen to you is if you get into their world. Like you've got to get down at their level, looking at what they're looking, you know, touching what they're touching, and so that they really sense that you're in their little universe with them. Teens are not that different. It's just more subtle. Like you're not going to necessarily, you know, mimic them like you would with a toddler. But what I would say is that if things have been running a little rough, like getting them on board with the expectations, or you're just like feeling not quite connected, get into your teens world, just show a lot of interest. Be willing to try new things alongside with them. Like, let's say they want to go do something and you're like, oh, that's not my thing. Well, I would retire the that's not my thing attitude as soon as possible. And just like play video games with them. Go to a baseball game, even though you don't relate to sports at all. Or sit on the TV and sit through like all those innings with them, and just take it as a time to get to know them. Like, what do you like about this? So I have my own story. My stepson and he was a little slow to warm to me. He thought I was like the harbinger of all things bad, because it meant that his parents were never going to get back together again. Like he really held on to that for a long time. So it didn't start easily for us. And so here I come in, this cheerful person, you know, basically bringing the sadness to him. And it was hard. But one thing that really built our relationship was I was willing to sit on the couch with him and just play video games, sometimes for hours. And I just started to get to have conversations with him. Like, oh, what do you think of this character? Like, oh, why'd you pick him? Oh, his armor's better? What makes it better? Or whatever, you know, like I just took an interest. So taking an interest in their interests, spending time doing the things that they like to do, doesn't mean you lose your authority. I think sometimes we think like if we kind of go over to what they're up to, that somehow we're no longer getting to have our own life, or we're not getting to, you know, kind of be in control of things. But I think it's furthest from the truth, because then you also get to kind of see what their capacity is. Like, you know, maybe they're actually a lot more insightful about what motivates people than you realized. And you get to find out when you talk about, well, what do you think this character was feeling in that story, in that movie, or in that show, or in this podcast, or this book, you know? And they're actually super insightful. Like I was just sitting down with an 8th grader who I was working with on literature, and one of my former students, they needed me to homeschool them this past year. So I was like, okay, by the way, that shop's closed, so don't ask, but I did make some space in my calendar to homeschool her. And we were having these really sophisticated conversations about character motivation and everything. And I know that it was important that we did that first before I introduced, for example, her assignment and asked her to sit with this material for 3 hours and write an essay, right? Like I had to connect with her on like how she was thinking about it, feeling about it. So that's my first top tip with a teen. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah.
You were saying, I heard you say, you know, one of the fears sometimes as a parent is a parent might lose that authority. What else do you find kind of tends to get in the way, you know, when parents are trying to emotional coach?
Oh yeah, I got it. So we misread things all the time. And we think that there's like one way to handle a big emotion. And I don't mean that in like a punitive way. I just mean like we have our go-to that maybe works for us, or maybe we do what like was done to, you know, on our behalf. And we can kind of like run an old method that just isn't really applying to what's happening in front of you. And so just realizing there's a lot of nuances, and there's something I want to share with you that helped me a lot. when I was first trying to figure out what to do with these big meltdowns, tantrums, and power struggles. So this is a model that was taught to me by Dr. Daniel Siegel, and he keynotes all over the world. I've taught workshops to ballrooms of 500, and then went to his workshop where there was 20,000 people. Okay, so he's like really, really accomplished person about like how do we build emotional intelligence in children. He's written many books about it. And this whole idea of flipping your lid is a really great example of like what is happening in the brain when big emotions are running it. And I really mean running it. And it's because we have these like three parts of our brain: the brainstem that moves the body, all the automatic stuff is happening, helps our higher thinking kind of communicate to our body. We've got our limbic system in the middle with the alarm center that runs all the emotions. And then we have this sort of like cortex that wraps around it. And you can even do this with your hand right now if you're listening. I've shown this to thousands of parents now, and they just love it, and teachers and even administrators use it. And then what happens when you get upset is basically this analogy of your lid flips. So now this wise leader part of your brain that's up in the front, the front right behind your forehead, that is in charge of thinking and reasoning and making good choices and recalling past experiences, is kind of out to lunch. It's firing, but it's not firing in a smooth way anymore. And so you might even find yourself, in hearing your kids in these sort of like thought loops where they're stuck. You always this, you never that, right? And so it's called integration when these three parts are working together like this. But once the lid flips, you're no longer, your higher reasoning is no longer really, functioning. Why this is important is because it helps give us clues about how to respond when our kids are upset. And it takes some practice and time, and like what I call lid detecting. Like all of my clients, I said, you're going to identify as a lid detector in my world. Like you got to be able to get a sense of like, is it starting to come off? Is it halfway off? Are we all the way off? Because you're going to need to respond differently. And here's just a quick cheat sheet version of it. Okay, I'll give you this to look at today. So when it's lids off, it's all, I would call this act one of a tantrum, meltdown, or a big emotional episode. It's all hot and go. Lids are flipped. So this is when, and I know Nadine put into the chat, this is when that empathy makes such a difference. Empathize, help them tune into their body, help them calm down, help them be soothed. The number one mistake that people make, and this is something, if you're taking notes, like this is the one you'd write it down, is like, you can't get in a fight with a feeling. And oftentimes we try to logic it away, we try to distract it away, we try to do all these things, we try to get kind of fight with the feeling. But the truth of it is that feelings are meant to be felt. Feelings are meant to be felt. And so if we can empathize with them first, help them name it, help them experiencing it just enough, at least so they can acknowledge that it's there, they're going to be so much more successful in calming down and being soothed. And that's where this training I'm doing all week is filling up the toolbox of well, yeah, but how do I calm them down? I'm like, well, come check this out, because I've got a lot of options. But for this, realizing that you got to wait until that lid comes down. And sometimes you're not involved. You take space. And with their parents of teens, you know how important this is to give space and take space when emotions are running high. But being able to recognize when you should step away and give that space before it's too late, before you're in the fight, before you're Melissa was yelling in the morning. This was a really big aha for her. She's like, oh, I feel the lid coming off. I'm going to step away. She'd say that to the girls and even go like this, I'll be back when I've calmed down. And she comes back and she goes, let me ask you again how we'd like breakfast to go this morning. Instead of why aren't you at breakfast? So then when we're in the cool and know, we can do things like ask that question, right? Problem solve, offer choices, take action, and actually make plans and make some sense of what you just went through. Okay, I think I'm frustrated because I'm in a hurry this morning. It's a precondition. My perception is you guys are doing this on purpose. That's a part of the trigger. And, you're not at the dinner, you're not at the breakfast table yet. That's how I got triggered. Sorry, I almost went there. I caught myself feeling proud this morning. Late girls, it'd mean a lot to me if you could come to breakfast right now, because I think we got to get this show on the road. What do you say? Totally different than why aren't you here? Right? So just this piece, becoming a lid detector of your own lid, of your kid's lid, and knowing when you're in act one and when you're closer to act 2 or all the way back into act 2, where you can actually logically explain things. You can offer a lot of choices. You can take action, make plans, make amends, whatever is needed here. So
Beautiful.
yeah,
Super powerful. So, so important, right? As parents, that we model what you just said, right? How she modeled that, and how, and some of it, most of us weren't taught that, right? That
right.
I love how you said, we can't get in a fight with our feelings, and we can't do that with ourselves either, right? We just need to feel it, name it, experience it, acknowledge that it's there. So, and I would say, myself included, that my experience has been, in order to navigate that, when I've had those transformations in my life, and also with my sons who are now adults, usually we need some support, right? It doesn't usually
Yeah.
happen overnight. It's usually, either mentorship, some group support, and all of that. So I'm super excited that people don't have to try do it on their own. I know you have an event that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
are you
one
able
of
to
the
share
things,
a little bit about that?
of course. So one of the things that tends to get in the way, and you're kind of sharing, is like being able to actually like, okay, so now I know about this lid flipping thing. I know that I can tell, I'm starting to sense, okay, I got it. Like I can see that they're in act 1, and now what, right? Like, how do we actually get that lid back on? And so why I share this out widely, like I have 700 people in my group, and I have dozens of folks tuning in every time I give this training, is because we need to have some options that work for us, and it's not a one size fits all. So I'll share with you a little visual here of like, so we're getting together this week to have 6 quick and easy strategies that we can use in the moment to find our calm. And I say amidst the chaos, meaning like any kind of big emotion that's going on, or that moment of panic of like, okay, now what do I do? I get it, Vanessa. I get it, Vireo. Like I'm supposed to put the lid back on, but how? We're going through 6 strategies this week that really give you some options so that you can find your best fit calm down strategy. And we started on Monday, but the videos are up, and like I'm actually wearing this fun shirt, you might have noticed, because today's technique was lightening up. So like, how can we have some fun? How can we maybe be a little playful with this? We can even over dramatize the emotion we're feeling to kind of give it like, let it have its little moment on the stage, and then we get to move through it. There's all these great ways we can bring humor in. So that's just one example of one of the tools, and that may not be yours. Maybe yours is more of the breathing tools, or the somatic release tools, or maybe the self-talk where you coach yourself through the moment. But that's what the series is all about. It's like, come down, come check out what these different tools are, and let me help you find your best fit ones in community, in support, so you don't just have to sit with like a list and figure it out on your own. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
I'm super excited. And like I said, I wish I would have had what you're offering now as a child myself, and with my own kids. So I highly recommend anyone listening now or later that you gift yourself, Calm to Chaos. Go and gift yourself this time with Vanessa. I know it's going to make a difference, not only in your own family, but that ripples out, of course, to our communities, and right now the whole world, which could use more calm amidst the chaos. So any final words you want to say? And I promise I'll pop the link in the chat. And thank you for checking, Vanessa, the Facebook too. As those of you who know me, I have rural internet, so mine is delayed when it comes in here.
Right.
So do
You
we
don't have that live,
see any
um,
questions?
feedback. Yeah.
Yeah, mine is always a bit of delayed. I go after and then I see it. Sometimes I can, it's always
Sure.
delayed, and sometimes I see the best comments after. So we can check. Let me just check and see. I know you said
That's
Nadine
great.
is there,
Yeah.
and
If you
so
want.
I do see some of them. So I'll just see
Okay.
if there's any questions. So those of you who are listening now, if you've
Yeah.
got some questions, Nadine, I would love if you pop them in the chat, and either myself or Vanessa will see them. I know, Nadine, you said that one of the books that we were talking about things that have helped you. Let me just see if there's any.
Yeah. And I'm here
Uh,
too. I can see too.
yeah,
Nadine,
if you see any questions,
yeah,
that
well, I
would
had
be great.
asked Nadine what kinds of behaviors are kind of challenging, right? Or still a struggle. And, it's using appropriate language in various different areas. Yeah. Yeah. So Eight-year-old boys, especially. I had 10 years of experience with 8-year-old boys. Because I had 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds in the same classroom. So I'd see them grow up from 6 to 7 and 7 to 8. And there was such a change. So I'm feeling you, Nadine. And appropriate language is interesting. Sometimes it's around just like having the perspective on like what's happening to be able to name it. So having a sidebar conversation about what's really going on can sometimes help get the language clearer. Other times they're using inappropriate language really as an attention grab, wanting more like just more eyes on them, more excitement coming their way, more opportunities to sort of experiment socially with like what happens when. And then sometimes it's about power, you know, like it's a way that they can have more control over the situation by sort of stirring up the pot or throwing in something inappropriate. And it's funny, we just had a session in my year-long program. This one mom said, he keeps saying bad words that he makes up. What do I do about that? Like instead of saying stupid, he'd say oopid, you're oopid, you know? And she's like, how do I handle that? And so we had to walk through like, you know, is this attention? Is this power? What's happening here? What's his experience? And, you know, what I could say is that, you know, kids often have to have things pointed out to them for them to realize they're doing it. You have to sometimes like and it's not like calling them out, like it's really calling them in. It's like, sweetie, I heard you say that word again. I'm pretty sure you just really want some attention right now. Like, how about if I drop everything and give you my attention, but we could do it not about the swear word. You know, like we could, like, what do you want to do right now? Do you want to hang out? Like, or can we hang out in 1 hour? Like, can I give you attention another way? Also, sometimes we need to starve certain behaviors of attention if we've been giving it too much. We just sort of go, you're doing that thing again, and walk away. They'll be like, you're not going to punish me. You're not going to like make a whole scene about this. And you're like, nope, I'm done with that. But I'd love to give you some attention about like, you know, helping me in the kitchen if you want to come hang out and do that. So that's something you could play with, Nadine. And then the other thing we're instructing them on all the time is understanding their impact on others. And that's the other thing that Nadine wrote, because neurologically, kids are not actually physiologically capable of true empathy on average until 7 years old. So he's an early empathizer, right? Like, and he's early in his experience with true empathy. So it takes practice. So one thing you could do is read some books with him where he has to sort of empathize with the characters and see if he can get into their heads and see why one character is behaving this way and another character is behaving a different way, either in shows or in books, stories. Hit that pause button and say, why do you think this is happening? Why would he do that? That's one thing. And the other is to just call attention to it and ask him what he'd like to do about it. Hey, when you cut in front of that kid in line, I saw him frown and get really upset and cross his arms. What would you like to do about that? And just see if he can kind of go, oh, like, you know, get that strike of empathy, that little like hit of empathy of like, oh man, you know. And it won't necessarily work every time, but what I've seen over time with my boys who have a lot they're expressing and they're not always noticing and they're doing things for power and attention, they don't realize the impact, is that if you bring it to their attention enough times, they start to catch themselves. And it's so worth it. It's like a labor of love. Might take a year. But then you're launching your 9 or 10-year-old into the next situation with these skills. It's so worth it. So that's my perspective on those two things, Nadine.
Yeah. Thanks, and thanks, Nadine, for being vulnerable and sharing in the chat as well. And thanks, Vanessa, for watching the chat there. Yeah, labor of love. And those power struggles, that's beautiful. And yeah, it's not instant. So I think, wow, those are a lot of amazing tools and tips to move through those power struggles and differentiating when our kids are looking for attention and when it's power, and how to redirect them in ways that are really kinder to all of us, right, at the end of the day. So I know we're kind of at time. So those of you who want more, I'm sure you will want more of Vanessa. We will I will put in the chat a link to her event, Calm to Chaos, that's happening right now. So anything you want to add about that? And otherwise, I think we're we're going to say goodbye.
Oh, I'm feeling complete on my piece, but I also want to just congratulate all of you who have found your way to Vireo. And like, what a beautiful move to say, you know what, I have a right to have pleasure in my life and to really embrace. And I just love, Vireo, how you take like all the myths, you know, like kind of banish all those negative myths about what it means to be a woman seeking pleasure. There's so many barriers to that. And I just think it's such a brave and cool and safe space you've created here. So just want to congratulate all of you for finding your way to Vireo. It's just such a special place to be, and you're in very good hands. So just wanted to share that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And of course, the more we can fill our pleasure tanks, right? And
Yes.
go, like you said, I think one of the moms, Melissa, you said, go off, fill ourselves up with pleasure, with joy and ecstasy. The more we give our children permission to have that as well, and then learn those tools so that we can navigate those moments where, they are big emotions and it's not joy and pleasure. It's usually the other emotions. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited that so many of the moms here who, whether they have, hopefully the ones who have younger ones will come to you when it's easier to start when they're younger.
Yeah.
Just so grateful for the tools that you've already brought us here today. And please do go and check out the link and find Vanessa. I'll also put the link to her group. Do you want to say the name of your group that you've got? Because you've got a group
Absolutely.
of
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the training series is happening, although folks can also join on Zoom. It's called Raising Our Resilience. So raising our resilience, like the whole family, right? Parent group. Yeah.
beautiful.
And but the best thing to do is to register for the event, because then you can just get all of the like, handy emails of like the replays are ready and we have some fun contests going on. And then it'll also give you a link to join the group if that's what you'd like to do too. So that way
Beautiful.
you can put your link in the you know in the live, so folks can find it that way through your link.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Vanessa, for joining us. And I will put the
Sure.
link in the comments as soon as we say goodbye here. So thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I'll
So
see you really
appreciate you. Take care.